Welcome to Start PT Now podcast. Let you know what's going on in your world and my world. Your guy, my guy, right guy.
That's right. That time of the week, we're joined back with Franco Ortuno, personal trainer at Aspen Hill Club. Franco, thank you as always for joining us today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, listen, we're here. Let's make that brain work a little bit. Now, last time I learned a few things for the upper body on stretches. Great video, by the way. Over 4,000 views. Right, guy? Did you know that?
I did know that. We really appreciate everyone watching the videos, sharing it, giving it a like. And, of course, big shout out to Franco for providing the expertise and the information there. It goes to show people are ready to get into their best health, their best fitness 2025. And we're going to keep it rolling this week.
I'm glad everyone's enjoying the content. I'm glad everyone's learning. And I hope that, everyone's taking something away from these videos.
Well, absolutely. And right, guy, what are we looking to learn today?
Well, we got a plethora of topics we want to cover. We've talked a lot about the core, some upper body exercises, and I really wanted to dial into a few things about the lower body as well. You know, I think leg day is an often neglected part of the equation. I know it has been for me, at least. I'll put myself on blast. I'm definitely guilty there. So I did want to get some of Franco's expertise in that regard, just starting with this question here. What are some of the most effective exercises you found for strengthening, let's say, like the knees and reducing pain from maybe a prior injury?
Totally. So when we talk about effective exercises, I would say obviously what comes to mind is, we have our traditional compound lifts, but they're going to be more free weight focused. And for that, I'm talking like, barbell, dumbbell. For that type of stuff, you're going to have to be a little bit more advanced if you're going to be moving the right way. So when we talk effectiveness, I think of machines, right? I'm thinking leg presses. I'm thinking anything that's going to isolate that specific muscle group that we want to target, whether it's the quads, the hamstrings, adductors, abductors, or just the legs all around. When we're talking about knee pain in particular, right? Huge thing to think about is our leg positioning. Are your knees going over your toes? Are they not? Sometimes it's okay for them to go over your toes. Sometimes it's not. This day and age, we've kind of been taught knees over toes is bad, but now we're starting to realize with more literature coming around, it's not so bad depending on the shin angle, all that stuff. So when you ask me effective exercises, that's not free weight. I'm going to say leg press, any sort of leg press variation, whether it's a vertical, horizontal, angled. And they're great because you can do them one leg at a time and you can do them both. So unilateral, bilateral, however you want. When we're talking knee, not putting too much stress on the knee, then we're trying to keep a relative 90-degree shin angle. So you don't want your knees going too far out over your toes. You want to keep them relatively behind the toes. So our joints are lined up. So you have the knees stacked on top of the ankle joint.
For someone at my age, and we won't talk about how old that is.
Not that old. Come on now.
I don't particularly like to get on a machine. So what would be 3 things I can do to maybe activate my lower body or get my legs going? What would you recommend?
Like if we're talking a lower body workout, getting loose before really getting those legs going before you're getting on a machine.
So I like to use TRX a lot. That's something you see in gyms, something we see here at the PT clinic.
Is that the bands?
The TRX is you have the 2 handles and it's usually anchored onto something, whether it's anchored onto a bar or onto the ceiling. The black and yellow bands with the handles, you usually see them, they say TRX. Those are great. I love to use them, especially with my clients. It depends. It doesn't really matter on the population. It could be older, it could be younger. Maybe they're rehabbing from an injury. I love to start off. I'll have them basically just do TRX assisted squats, right? So you're kind of grabbing onto the TRX band, leaning back, and you're just squatting. And it's nice because you have that support from the TRX band, so you don't have to worry about falling back or anything. You know that you're grabbing onto it. Now, on that, you can do squats. You can do lunges. Another one that I typically do when I'm not doing, after doing squats, I'll do a reverse lunge. Now we're working on our unilateral, working on the one leg at a time. That's another great one. Another one that you can do, free weights, if you don't really like to use machines, is grabbing a dumbbell, holding it at your chest, start off on a seat, and just simply stand up and then sit back down. That's a great variation. You're still working your lower body. It's relatively low strain, so it's not like you're working too hard. It's great to do when you're coming back from an injury. And it's also great, especially for the older population where they don't want to take it too hard but still work themselves to a good amount.
Yeah, and we all got to stand up. We all got to sit down at some point. So that can be helpful no matter what's going on. Yeah, very functional. Another thing I wanted to touch on is we talked a little bit about knees. We talked about warming up, getting ready for getting into these sort of routines. If we're talking hips, I know especially as we talk about some of the older population and any age, really. I've had my share of hip injuries as well, especially playing soccer and other sports. Those can come up pretty frequently. Are there any exercises or stretches that come to mind as far as trying to keep those healthy and ready for that sort of activity?
2 exercises that come to mind. Just a side plank, like we've done before, but instead of holding myself, anchoring myself at my ankle, I'm basically just holding myself on my knee. And 2 variations you can do. You can hold yourself, or you can pretty much drop your hips on that one side that you're planking on, and then come back up into that regular plank. And then another one would be a groin, mainly for my groin. So for the adductor, same idea, same concept where it's a side plank, but now instead of me using my adductors to stabilize me, I'm going to be focusing more on my abductors. Those 2 are going to be great, so we have the legs, right? Quads on the front side. We have the groins that come on the medial side, on the inside, and then the abductors, which is the muscle on the outside of the leg, and the hamstrings on the back. Oftentimes when we're hitting these exercises, a lot of times when we're in the gym doing exercises, typically it's only quads and hamstrings. We're not really showing much love and affection to the adductors and the abductors.
Now, if I'm not turning on these muscles in a certain sequence, am I likely to increase my injury rate for another part of my body?
Of course. And, when we think of the body, it's important to think of it as a kinetic chain, right? Everything's a chain. If one link is weak, then most likely other parts of the body are going to be at risk also of getting injured. So it's important that when you're priming yourself up, whether it's lower body, whether it's upper body, you're kind of working from the bottom up, from the ground up. So making sure that you're working every part, the joints, the muscles, all that important stuff.
Well, I like where this is going, right, guy? Where are we going to take them next?
Yeah, just going down the line, I had one more thing regarding lower body. I think there's a lot of talk about ankles. It's easy to sprain an ankle, twist an ankle, even from everyday activities. I've had a couple of times where I'm walking and maybe I hit a curb wrong, and you have that embarrassing moment where it kind of twists, you catch yourself, maybe almost fall, or maybe sometimes you do fall. If you're trying to be conscious of those things, keep the ankles strong. If we're trying to kind of diagnose those issues and strengthen those ankles, is there anything that you've found to be particularly effective as far as addressing those ankles?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if anyone remembers the ankle rockers that we did a few podcasts ago. That's
Right.
one thing that I love to do to kind of keep my ankles healthy, keep them mobile. But other than that, one thing that we don't really talk about is also elasticity of the joints, of the tendons. Because a lot of times every day in life, there's going to be a point in time where you might move a certain way that you didn't intend to or that you didn't expect to. So it's important that your body is ready to handle that. And the way that we do that is by training certain ways. In this case, when we're talking about the ankles, there's plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion, eversion. Those are the actions of the ankle. So it's important that whether you're training lower body or whatever you do, we always want to be training in a way that it's going to prepare you.
While we're on the ankle, let me ask this, especially we're talking about the lunges, the compounded lifts we're going to do. Do you recommend taping the ankle or using some sort of kinesiology tape or athletic tape for that purpose?
Definitely is a tool that is going to help you. So if you need to, by all means, go for it. I'm always a big advocate for that. Big advocate on using any tool that you have, however it's going to help you. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that we can use to our advantage. If you know how to use your tools, use them.
Well, listen, sounds like I need to invest in some kinesiology tape or athletic tape. Now, is there a difference between the two? I'm just curious.
They're both the same.
They're both the same.
They're both the same.
Just wanted that for the record, right, guy? Can I get that?
That's right. I know we use a lot of kinesio tape around here. And we have some great resources on our page at Start PT Now showing you some different taping techniques. We just did one last week with our PTA in Glen Burnie showing how to tape for tennis elbow, which is another common one when we're getting into sports, especially through the winter. And that's why we're joined by Function with Franco to tell us a bit more about some of these areas. As far as 2025, we're talking about resolutions. We're talking about people getting into shape, getting in the gym, staying healthy. Do you have any personal fitness goals for 2025?
Yes. I'll tell you right now, it is to get a six-pack. I think a lot of us want
They
to
got
get
those
there,
for
right?
sale?
Hey, maybe.
You get a 12-pack.
No, so for the thing about me is, I've always had a strong core. I've always been very athletic, always played many sports. Different body types, we all accumulate fat maybe around our belly, maybe around our legs. And for me, that typically is around my belly, and I have love handles sometimes. Exactly.
Or the love handle big three over here. I'm right there with you.
So one thing I've been kind of working on to address that is, like we talked about last time, eating clean, making my foods at home, knowing what I'm putting into my food, making sure everything's fresh. Been definitely ramping up the cardio just a little bit more, whether it's actually doing 2 sessions a day. The first session is cardio and core maybe, and then the next session will be whatever I'm doing that day, whether it's lower body, upper body. If I'm not doing that, just finding other ways to stay active throughout the day, throughout the week, maybe going snowboarding, maybe going for multiple walks with my dog, things like that. Just finding how I can be as active as possible. How can I expand as much energy as possible?
Is that the best way to really lose love handles, to just kind of turn on your body so it's running all the time? Because eating clean is great. I try to do that. I'm still not finding the success. The cardio I've actually increased on the elliptical, which I think is having an effect on me for the positive. But the third part, I mean, what exercises would you recommend? Give me 3 things I can do for my love handles or to strengthen that part of the body.
We're going to strengthen our core, the front side, and the sides, also the back. So for me, I like to do hanging leg raises. Those are pretty difficult though. So maybe you can do those. Leo, I think you could do those.
I've done it.
Don't underestimate yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
But if we're looking for something easier, I guess number 2 would say I like to do heel taps. So I'm just laying on the ground, my feet are bent, and I'm just tapping my heels with my hands. Now I'm working on my obliques. To work on my back core, on the back side, I like to do Supermans, laying on the ground face down, and you're pretty much just lifting up your whole body. It's not as hard as it sounds.
Well, absolutely not. And I actually am happy to hear that I'm doing 2 of the 3. Hanging leg raises is next. I had a little bit of a issue on the elbow. But on the heel tap, you mentioned getting on the floor. Is that recommended, or is it just as effective standing up doing it that way?
So for the heel tap, I like to do it on the floor. Just for, in my opinion, it's easier, especially when you're on a mat. You can actually slide around too, so you don't have too many things kind of stopping you. You can actually move effectively.
And you mentioned a bit about cardio and having a cardio routine. I'm trying to ramp that up as well. What does that typically look like for you? Is that spending some time on the treadmill? Or are you utilizing different machines, getting outside?
Yeah, so for me, that looks like, one day I might be in the gym walking for 30 minutes. The next day I'll be running. So when I'm running, I hate running. It takes a lot for me to get to run. The only way you can get me to run is typically if I'm only playing soccer. But I kind of found other ways to make it fun for me, to make it enjoyable, to, I guess, give it a purpose. And for me, when I'm not walking on the treadmill and I'm running, what I'll do is intervals. So I'm pretty much starting at 2 miles per hour, and then I'll jump up to 4 miles per hour, kind of start jogging, and then I'll go back down to 2, and then up to 5, back down to 2, up to 6. Sometimes I'll stay like the baseline, which is 2 miles per hour in this case, what we'll say. I'll keep it at 2 miles per hour. Other days, I'll kind of just keep increasing that baseline, so I'll go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and then same thing, still jog. That way, when I'm doing that, I'm kind of keeping the intensity much higher. So it depends on the day.
Yeah, and I'm curious because I tend to do a lot of the same, kind of alternating like the walking and the running. For people who don't know, and me included, what is the difference between the sort of expenditure and results you get from walking versus running?
So you're working different heart rate zones. So we have what's called, it goes basically from zone 0 to zone 5. As you run, you're going to be in those higher zones. You're looking at anywhere between 3 and 5. When you're walking, typically it's going to be between 0 and 2. Pretty much to answer your question. Keep it as simple as possible.
There we go.